Hey, goalies, we're excited to have Dustin Schwartz here with the Edmonton Oilers, and of course we have Cam Lanigan too with our squad here. So we're gonna talk all things goaltending and about the Oilers, about the playing days. But excited to have you on, Schwartzy. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be a part of it, and I'm glad you guys are taking the time to do this.
So we both sort of have a connection to Schwartzy. Lanny was with the Oil Kings for a couple months while Schwartz was, I think, the advisor there. I don't know if you're full time there, Schwartzy, but and then me and Schwartzy played against each other back in the day. He was from Stettler and I was from Red Deer, and he stole my spot a couple years in AAA because he was better, but that's okay. And then we
That's
met up
not
again,
true.
and then we met up again in the Western League too, and Schwartzy went on to play with Med Hat in Red Deer, and then 5 years at U of A, very successful career at U of A. So a guy with a lot of playing experience too, and just how you got into coaching, Schwartzy. You got in sort of right after U of A, is that right?
Yeah, so I played my 5 years at the U of A, which, like you said, were 5 really enjoyable years. It's such a great program, and kind of really gave you some of the tools that you use as a coach going through that schooling program. And then I started actually coaching with a program that doesn't exist anymore, with the Fort Saskatchewan Traders. And there was a guy by the name of Steve Hamilton who was the head coach there, who's now the coach for the Calgary Hitmen. And he had actually asked me if I would be interested in kind of coaching from an assistant coaching and a goalie coaching perspective. And so that was kind of my start. And the irony of it was that my first junior goalie that I had was my billet from Red Deer. So he ended up being the goalie and I ended up being the coach. So you fast forward years later and you're coaching your billet brother. So it was a kind of a cool experience, and that kind of just got things started.
And you had a pretty quick climb up the goalie coaching ranks too. I mean, you're with the Oil Kings in the Western Hockey League, but it wasn't long before you got your opportunity in the NHL. And so how did that sort of come about, and what year was that, Schwartz?
I started after Fort Sask. We ended up going over with the Spruce Grove Saints. Steve was the coach again, and the whole staff had moved over. And that program there was pretty dominant at the time, and I think they continued to be that way. We had lots of good players and goalies go through the program, so you kind of started to open up opportunities for yourself as a coach. The Oil Kings was an opportunity that was presented to me earlier, but with my job, I wasn't able to commit to it. And then finally, it ended up actually working out that I could make it work. So I ended up joining ship, I think, with them in about, Lanny, what was it, 2011 your last year?
2011, yeah, my 18-year-old year.
So I kind of started helping out a little bit there. I wasn't full-time. And then from the next season on, I was full-time with the Oil Kings. And it was a good time. Like, Cam and those guys had come through as it was just starting to get to transpire into a really good team. And we had some good goalies coming up with Tristan Jarry and Laurent Brossois were in the program, right behind Cam and stuff like that. And so we can say Cam paved the way for them. And they come in and did a really good job, and we ended up winning the Memorial Cup in 2014. And I was fortunate to have those guys because it opened up opportunities with Hockey Canada, with the World Junior programs and things like that to be involved. So I think I'm going on 10 years of doing, World Junior stuff. And that's been a huge opportunity to network and collaborate and build yourself as a coach a little bit. I did the Ivan Holinka tournament as well. So again, you kind of branched out and met some new people. And then from there, opportunities kind of started to present themselves a little bit. I had a couple of interviews with other teams that weren't the Oilers the summer before the Oilers job opened up. And I ended up not being able to take them for a variety of different reasons. One of them actually went to another guy, and the other one was family reasons. And then, lo and behold, November, I got a call from Craig McTavish, and the Oilers job opened up. So I'm very fortunate to have had that opportunity and still enjoying it.
That's awesome. So maybe we fast forward now, because I know the kids are excited to talk NHL goalies and the NHL life. So let's look at the two guys you got there now, and a lot of the kids here from Calgary will be familiar with Smith, but there's a lot of Oilers fans in Calgary too. So you're looking at those two guys, both pretty big bodies. What would you say is sort of the similarities and maybe the big differences in their game? And how do you manage that?
Okay, good question. I'll start differences because it's kind of some real obvious ones. I mean, everybody knows how Smitty handles the puck. It's all world, really. Like, I mean, you just kind of give him the green light, and he takes care of things because he's that good at it. His reads off the rush with regards to his puck handling, his retrievals, his footwork, his ability just to make a 10-foot pass on the tape every time. He alleviates a lot of pressure on the forechecks. So, I mean, his skill set is very, very unique. Miko, who is obviously not at that level, there's not many that are, has really worked hard to improve his craft, especially in that area. I mean, he's literally, and this is every day, the first guy on the ice with the bucket of pucks. And he's got the pucks behind the net, and he's working on throwing a puck to the half wall. He's working on putting a puck up on the glass. He's working on clearing the zone. And there's nobody else on the ice. So his first 10 minutes, he's the only guy out there, and he does as much as he can possibly do to get better at that part of the game. We were fortunate to have Jim Playfair jump on board this year as the D coach, who'd had Smitty in the past, which really allowed a clear decisions for our defensemen to make, because they did the same thing over and over. So it became easier for Miko to improve his puck handling because the guys were always in the right spot, and Smitty would hold them accountable if they weren't. So it made it a lot quicker transition for Miko to improve. So that would be obviously the biggest difference. And then when you watch them positionally, both obviously big bodies, but Smitty plays a lot deeper than most in the league. And he's got his reasons as to why he does it. He always is able to get himself into position. He feels that it gives him a little bit more time to read pucks off of the release. And there's a bunch of different things that he feels comfortable and confident to play in that manner. And it's interesting when he gets a little bit over aggressive. I think his game starts to be less consistent. When he's controlled and comfortable in his positioning, I think his game is very, very under control and able to make the saves he needs to make. Miko's a little bit more aggressive, especially off rush situations and plays like that. In traffic, he's a little more aggressive. So his size becomes a little bit more able just to make a little shift, a subtle movement in his save execution. Not as good a hands as Smitty, which he relies a little more on the positional side and his size to make a few more saves, where Smitty is elite athlete when it comes to catching pucks and getting his gloves on pucks. So those are some of the differences and some of the things that they do individually. I think that allows them to both be successful at the NHL level. Miko's game, and I give the guy a ton of credit, has come tenfold from where we started 2 years ago to where he is to this day. And, when the season ended, he was at the top of the Pacific Division with Markstrom statistically. So he's really made some real positive strides from, where he started when he first come over to North America. So that would be the differences.
Potentially, like, they both wear their gear differently too. Hey, like he's really baggy and he has like the saggy gear look, whereas Koskinen, he's almost more like it's tighter to his body and stuff. Like, could you touch on their playing style? Like, why? I mean, I'm sure you've talked to Smitty, for example. He wears almost like what Flair used to, right? Like super baggy.
Yeah, and you know what? You know how it is we've played a little bit, obviously, and it's everybody to each their own, right? Like, I know Talb's in Calgary has got the straps over top of the chest pad, and it's cinched right down to his pants. And where Smitty, I was more like Smitty personally. I would prefer to have a little more free-flowing.
No, I agree. I was the same way too.
Yeah, and it's easier I felt for me personally, and Smitty as well, I think it's easier to move. The design on pads nowadays, and you guys know as well as anyone, how pads seal the ice. You need a little bit of that floating motion. So Smitty's gear is a little bit looser. I think where it's beneficial is, for him too, it takes up a little bit more net with his size. And the chest pads now are so streamlined that anything you can get as far as a little bit more presence in the net, I think that's beneficial. Miko's a massive human being. Like, he is so big. I think he benefits from being a little bit more compact in his approach. rather than getting opened and loosened up. Doesn't play as athletic a game as Smitty might. So I think his gear is kind of designed to fit the way he plays a little bit. And I think that's a good point, Cam. I think for young goalies too, is that as you progress, you'll find out A, what's comfortable for you, and B, what's going to give you the greatest opportunities for success, which is making saves, right? So
yeah. Absolutely.
So you look at these two guys, and obviously they're competing for net time, and obviously probably two pretty competitive guys. What is their relationship like? On the ice, off the ice. Are they buddies? Is it a challenging environment? How does that look?
Both incredible levels of compete. Miko's is a lot quieter, obviously, than Smitty's. He just kind of not as vocal. Smitty is vocally. He'd be more like myself, Kev, a little more vocal.
Yeah.
But he's. They both have an elite level of competitiveness, which I think any goalie that plays at an elite level, you have to have that competitive edge. They both obviously want to be in the net like any of us do or would. But I think the one thing that kind of makes them unique is that they both have their own ways of leadership. Like if I look around our locker room, I think they both are incredible leaders, and they do it in different ways. Smitty would be much more capable of standing up and saying, hey guys, let's take this, let's work at this, let's do this, that sort of thing. Where Miko just goes out and quietly does his thing. And their work ethic is incredible, which I think is a leadership skill in itself. As far as, being teammates in that, they're super supportive of each other. And we've talked about that one-on-one in meetings, in our goalie meetings. We talk about staying unified as a unit. We pull for each other. We work together on and off the ice. And I think that that's a real sign to the testament of both of their characters. And I think, when you look around the league at goalies that have been around for 10 plus years in pro hockey, it doesn't have to be just the NHL. Character is usually a trait that stands out at the forefront, whether it's work ethic, whether it's leadership, those sorts of things. And I think both those guys are model citizens of that, and both excellent teammates. So, they make everybody else around them better. And I think that they do it in their own unique ways.
That's awesome. And I think that's good for young goalies to hear too. The two guys sort of left alone, especially minor hockey, like not having a dedicated coach like you out there on a daily basis, and just to support their partner and support each other throughout the season, because it could be tough mentally as well as physically, as you know. So, Lanny, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I got a question about, so Smitty was helping Koskinen, he said, with the puck handling stuff. I wonder if there's a kind of the same relationship in terms of, like, when we do video reviews, I try and clip in some NHL stuff. And one guy going back to, for like just how efficient he is on the post and how well he uses that RVH or reverse VH, is Koskinen. Like, his post play to me was exceptional this year, especially with his stick, is the one thing I saw Schwartzy. Like, when he'd go down, it wouldn't be, I mean, he's big enough to use it as a stance, but he'd also be very active with his stick, and it would be, it almost became a broken record in terms of what I was using with clipping him in and kind of showing younger kids. Whereas Smitty, he's a little bit bigger, but I wouldn't say he uses it as efficiently as Koskinen. And I wonder if maybe he was kind of helping Smitty in that regard, or what your dialogue was with Koskinen and reverse.
It's funny, Lanny, that's an unbelievable observation. And I say that with a ton of respect. When Miko came over, it was an area of his game that he spent a lot of time on. There was no real guidelines, like as far as timing into your reverse VH, when to get bats. One thing we've had to talk lots about, you got to play from your feet too. Like, you can't get stuck down in those positions all the time. You got to be able to open up windows on your feet, and you got to be able to
open. The thing with kids, sorry to interrupt, but it's almost like you had to teach the kids when they don't have that size, is you got to use it as a save rather than a stance. But if you can get efficient with it, you can use it as a stance, right?
So we talk about I call it a setup, and we refer to the setup at certain times, right? One of the things that really helped Miko last summer was working with Korpisalo. And if you get a chance to watch any footage of Korpisalo, he is, I would say, top 3 skaters in the National League. Like, his edge control in and out of his posts is exceptional. And I think that that's one thing that really, and Miko will attest, helped Miko with his post-play skills. We've kind of got 5 things that we've kind of simplified it into as far as the post-play goes. One of it is timing and usage of his RVH, when to play from his feet, when not to. So kind of that's one. His movement in and out of that RVH, which would be something that I think is critical. You know, we talk about T-pushes and shuffles and general movements, but moving in and out of your post is a form of a movement, and you have to be able to execute that. So that would be 2. When you go into your post play, not using it as simply just a blocking tool, but staying active in your tracking, keeping your hands engaged. All of those activities, I think, are continue to be important, whether you're in it or not. And then to stick along the goal line, and we've talked about when it's in certain positions and when it's not. And then obviously your ability to compete to your next position if the puck changes location. So we've talked a lot about just some little details to kind of help him navigate the post a bit.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what, like in the summer with Carter Hart as well, like we spent a lot of time. We'll take one element and just spend a whole week on it, whether it's like using the double seal and opening up windows.
Yeah.
And then how to use the double seal. And he's as efficient as they get on their post too.
And a smaller guy using it as well, right?
Exactly. And you know what? As long as your tracking and your timing into it is good, and you're not getting caught in the transition, I think you can use it as a 6'1", 6'2" goalie as well.
What about touching on? So there's 2 different ways to seal, right? You can go like horizontal, so skate blade is like perpendicular to the post, but that kind of leaves that. Depending on how you, like Smitty might get away with it the way his pad sits, because it's baggier, it might have more play there on the post. But when we're working with young kids, we're really talking about connecting with, we call it the toe bridge, right? Like that, the front of the kind of where the cowling used to sit, that big nub. How detailed are you, especially like touching on Carter Hart now with working with him? Sometimes I'll see he goes skate on, other times I see he goes toe bridge. Is it a big detail that you stress on, or like obviously connection is first? You don't want to slip in and get the grasp seal. That's, unless you're aiming for that, that's kind of trouble.
Which is what Tuukka does, right? He's pad in, Jonathan Quick's pad in, Talbot's pad in on the blocker side, not on the glove side, but on the blocker side.
Interesting.
So yes and no. For me, your point you made about the connection and not missing it, I think is number one.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go skate in, toe bridge in, pad in, I think that's really important that you get your connection and then your ability to move from that next play, right? Totally. If you go pad inside the post and you can't get to your next position, then maybe you look at another option, right? Yeah. If you're going skate on the post and that's what you've been taught and that's what you're working with and you're giving up a lot of short side, then you might want to look at using the toe bridge as an option. So I think a little bit of it, and then flexibility becomes a factor too, because some guys that do go skate in have maybe a little more flexibility in their knee, ankle, and hips to be able to create that short side coverage. So I think you got to be able to work with your athlete to find what's comfortable. I think with the younger goalies, consistency in mobility and connection to the post, I think is the greatest piece. I think it's super important. I think for me personally, with the older goalies, when you start getting goalies that have played the position successfully for as long as they have, they're not just going to conform to change, totally. Right? You're going to have to make and you know, Lanny, like if I were to come in and said, hey, you're going to change this, you'd been like, dude, I'm doing okay right now. You know? Yeah. So you have to have enough ammunition, maybe that's the right word for it, to know that the change is necessary to encourage the athlete to change it. So, for example, you're not going to Tuukka Rask to say you're going to change to skate on post every time because he's been successful with it. So I think you got to be able to work with the athlete, find what they are comfortable with and what they're capable of, and what gives them the most chance of creating as much success in that specific moment and that situation as possible.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome stuff, guys. I think you can geek out on post play and goalie talk all day.
Yeah.
I know Schwartz, you used to work with youth goalies a lot, probably not so much anymore. But as you see your prospects come up, as you see a guy like Stuart Skinner come up, and I use him just because I've had a little bit of time with him. But as you see these guys come up, what is one thing you think is lacking that maybe they're missing maybe they're missing in their development as a youth goaltender?
So I would say it's funny. I've actually got back with the youth stuff because my kids are coming up now, and they're not goalies, thank goodness. But they, the opportunity to get out with some of those young goalies and see has been a lot of fun, because now you've kind of got to see all the levels and then go back to the grassroots again on a more frequent basis. I think the younger the athlete, the more time needs to be spent on the foundational pieces. I think movement is absolutely imperative. I think the understanding position is critical. Obviously, your movement takes you there, but really having a good grasp on what positioning is. And I think the more you teach it and the more you coach it repetitively, the better their understanding. And then it just becomes innate. They just do it and they know where they should be and they know what works for them. And then obviously tracking. I mean, that's kind of, been a nuance over the last kind of 10 years that's kind of come into play as a factor that's been separated from the game as a priority. And I think that can be applied across the board in a variety of categories and becomes habitual on a regular basis. So as the young goalies, I think those are three areas to help kind of guide them to their next levels. As far as challenges go, I think when we get to bantam and midget, the area that I would say that we got to really, as coaches, spend a lot of time on is the reads part of the game, like the decision making. There's a lot of goalies in bantam that are as technically sound as a lot of junior goalies. And it's funny because I talked to a goalie yesterday in our system, and we were talking about the value of understanding who you are as a goalie. And we talked about Anton Khudobin. And we talked about when you look at him play, like technically there's guys in the American League that you'd be like, oh, I'd rather play like that guy. But Anton Khudobin is a 920, 925 goalie in the National League. And when you watch it, you're like, there's things I would do differently, but why would he change who he is?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what he's good at is reading the game and his decision-making and how he executes. And I think that can start in bantam and midget. I look at where we're at with our junior goalies at the Western League level, and I think reads and decision-making is a huge part of where we need to spend some time. Everybody hits the technical, and you got to have that element of the game. But at the end of the day, when you get to the next levels, all those goalies have technical skills. And there might be a tweak here and there that really helps them progress technically. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's how we read and the decisions that we make within the game. And I think those things can be taught at a simplified and a easy understanding version when they're younger in that bantam and midget level.
I think it's kind of almost having like your own flair to it. Hey, Schwartzy, like for example, I mean, when I first broke into the league with Edmonton, I was always told you can move, but you have bad hands. And it was almost like the lead up that summer was just like power skate. And we really hammered in the technical side, but then it was almost like it wasn't forgotten about, but that it's like going and playing mini sticks and you just want to do the flip, you want to do the windmill all the time. Like that kind of keeping that flair through your game, I think is important. I think it came, in terms of my career, it came around kind of full circle towards the end where it was just time to put it all together because I was facing an option of do you keep playing or do you not? Like you got to make it happen here. And I think when you kind of went back to just like keeping that love for the position and there's going to be certain things that you do different. Like no one's going to go out and be the next Carey Price, like a mirror image. Like you can use Carter Hart or these guys to aspire to, but I think it's important for young goalies to still like bring your own flair to it. It's still got to be fun. It's still got to be you. It's a very personal, I think, position, and being so vulnerable. I think the more you can bring your own style as well. It's cool that you touched on that because I think it's important, especially for young guys coming in. You can almost get too technical, and it can become a bit of a glass ceiling on where you can go.
Yeah, and I think unleashing or opening up that potential right behind you there is a good line for that. Like that really is opportunities present themselves, I think, to those that can kind of think about themselves individually and what their identity looks like. And you use an example of yourself, but think about other sports too. Like if all we ever did was go hit the driver on the driving range, our score is not going to get any better.
Yeah.
Right. Until you start practicing and working on and maintaining other elements of your game, then you're just, limiting yourself to not being able to reach what you would be capable of if you hit some other home runs in other areas. So personally, like, that's where I think a summer training plan, especially once you get to bantam and midget, because you started to identify yourself a little bit already. Your foundation has been set. You know what you're going to be like as far as a lot of your skill sets go. So now it's a matter of, okay, this is what I need to work on. I've got to maintain these other things. This is my focal point for the summer. And then you build on it. You can use that with a player too. You know, if the kids got their skating and their shooting and their passing skills down, and you really start to notice that they're, you know, gravitate to the net and their net front presence is really where their skills are starting to go. You can start to guide a player in that direction to really hone their skills to have success in those areas. And I think that's what's unique about playing any sport, is the opportunity to be able to look at your individual self, figure out what works for you, and then identify where the holes are in your game and tighten those things up. That's development at its finest.
Yeah. Well, that's Smitty. You're working with a guy right there who's a true niche. Like, when he was getting traded from here, his big thing was, what are we going to do to fill that gap of how well he worked with the defenseman in breakouts and relieving forecheck pressure and stuff. And I think for the average fan, they might think that's maybe thrown around too loosely, but once you understand the game, something like that is, I'm sure Smitty could have turned that off halfway through his career. And, you know, why do I put so much time into this puck handling? It is a little bit redundant or unnecessary, but now it might have actually extended his career, right? Like, he's the best in the league, hands down.
Totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. How did he, do you ever talk to him? Like, how did he get so good at that? Was he always playing ball hockey as a player, or? He's
an unreal athlete. Like, he can shoot the 1T, like, shoots the puck really well. Like, he's got some skills with the stick, right? But you know what? Like, there's things Smitty does too that, you know, make him very unique. He gets on, he's got his skating warm up, which is all a lot of edge control stuff. And that edge control stuff is similar to the stuff that he uses when he's working outside his net. You know, I refer to it as an eagle turn, or, you know, whatever people call it on the inside edges, but he works on that stuff all the time. And that's his warm up before he even starts practice. So I think he's been
so you're talking like crease pattern stuff, almost like line work, board to board sort of?
Yeah, he'll do it that way. He'll do it down the whole ice. You know, he'll just work all the way down the ice. And a lot of the guys now, that edge work stuff with the puck handling is as important as the puck handling, because it gets you out, it gets your eyes up ice, it gets you in a position where you can deliver forehand or backhand. And, you know, Miko sees that stuff too, jumps on board. He's working on it. Our prospects see it. They're working on it. So it really is a trickle-down effect to everybody being involved in it. And now the cool part is, once those things start to solidify themselves with the other goalies in the organization, now your time becomes focused on other things, which is really a positive from a development perspective.
That's awesome. I think that's obviously we're going to have a lot of young goalies listening in, and I think that's really an important point to hit home, that, you know, you don't have to be with a coach. You don't have to, you know, be in a private lesson. You could be utilizing the ice time and doing edge work and doing movement and really, you know, maximizing your time on the ice versus just standing out there as a target in practice.
Just to touch on that, Kev, I've been doing, obviously our development camp is unsure if it's going to go. I'm assuming it won't, but we've been doing a lot of calls like this over Zoom with our prospects and different things like that. And our first topic that we talked about was puck handling. And I asked them straight up question. I'm like, how many of you guys, and there was a few guys on the call, have been outside doing some puck handling? Like, it's one thing that you don't have to get on the ice to do to get better at. When you start looking at the value of puck handling, I believe one of the reasons that our PK has improved a little bit from last year to this season was the puck handling of our goalies. It helped to get more retrievals, which helped to get the puck into our defenseman's hands, which helped in clears, right? There's so much, I think, forechecking pressure. We break out of the zone. When you look at the fancy analytical stats, we get out of our zone cleaner than we did the year before. Well, some of that probably goes to the goalies getting back to a few more pucks. So I think the value individually to build those skill sets can really have a huge impact in the team element.
That's cool that you said that. I know goalies that are part of our program have been getting weekly puck handling videos from Lanny, and as part of our off-ice support for them. And just doing different things with whether it's a ball or puck or got their
Mm-hmm.
glove blocker on. So that's cool that you pointed that out. We're tight on time here, so we're gonna get some fun ones jump towards you. You know, as obviously the Oilers coach, we would be not doing our goalies a duty if we didn't ask what number 97 is like up there in Connor McDavid.
He is as good a player as there is. You know, obviously he's quietly goes about his business. I mean, his practice habits, like if you want to talk just about pure athlete, are off the charts. You know, he's a driver. He drives practice. He leads by example. He's highly, highly competitive. And he challenges everybody around him to be better in his own way. And I think that's what makes him such a special player. I mean, his speed and attacking force off the rush is incredible. You know, you watch the defenseman in practice, like, you know, gaps change quickly when he gets the puck in full flight. And same with the goalie, like your ability to get set early enough when he picks up the puck in the neutral zone, you don't have much time. So the read that you have to make to be prepared for that attack it happens quickly. So obviously that's helping everybody around him to be better when he's in full flight. And I think the thing that's most impressive is the humility side of it. I mean, he's out there doing goalie sessions at the beginning of practice with the goalies and, you know, shooting pucks and the extra work that he puts in at the end of practice. It just goes to show how you're the best in the world for a reason. If you want to stay there, you keep working at it. I think that he exemplifies that. And, you know, I've been fortunate to watch pregame skates and practices with, you know, the Penguins and teams like that too. And, you know, first guy on, you know, is Crosby, and the work habits that go into those elite players is second to none.
That's awesome. I don't think you have to be an Oilers fan to appreciate what McDavid brings to the game. We're going to do some quick hits here, Schwartzy. So
Sure.
Your favorite NHL arena outside of your own?
Vegas's atmosphere, Minnesota's the aesthetics or the way it looks.
Cool. Your favorite NHL city on the road?
Chicago, Nashville.
Two excellent spots, I would imagine.
Yeah, very good.
What's the significance of number 19 with Koskinen?
Actually, I honestly don't even know the answer to that, other than that it's the weirdest number in goaltending history. And I just let him roll with it, and he's good. So I don't know.
That's awesome. Okay, you were a fiery guy when you played. You notoriously.
Rumor has
notoriously, you're a fiery, competitive guy. Still like that as a coach?
No. In fact, it's interesting because it's one area that, as a coach, I've never actually had to really change a whole lot. I think you're still got that competitive edge, but you find a way to manage that. It's different when you're in the heat. As an athlete, if we start playing, the competitive nature comes right back. And I don't think you lose that. I think that's what was a strength and a weakness.
But when you were shooting on me, Schwartzy, in your player skates, you'd bear down.
Absolutely.
You'd bury.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Lanny, you got any quick ones here? We got a couple minutes left, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah. What's the coolest part about the new rink there?
Honestly, the dressing room is unreal. The layout of it, the space of it, the 2020.
That's all no snub either. Like, you guys came from a nice.
Yeah, I mean, the rink, say what you want, right? The rink was older, you know, but the renos were nice. The locker room there was incredible. And the Oil Kings facilities were in Rexall were outstanding as well. So, the dressing room is unreal. I mean, the history of the Oilers, and I know it's, you know, been a while, but it's pretty cool to go in and see, you know, Wayne Gretzky on the wall and the Stanley Cups, and that's pretty neat. Yeah, if you're a fan of hockey, it's hard not to.
Champs, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about your favorite goalie in the league?
You know what? I have a bunch, and for different reasons. You know, I think I've coached Carter for a long time since he's been a young kid, and I have a ton of respect for the way he approaches his game. And obviously, you got a relationship there. I still think Marc-Andre Fleury's personality and the way he approaches the game. I wish I would have been more like that. And and
Yeah.
had a little bit more jovial fun with what he does. Like, you watch a pregame skate, and I think that's a very cool approach to the game. You know, the guys, I've been so lucky to be able to work with good people, you know, from Cam Talbot to Smitty to Miko. Like, you see the work those guys put in. It's hard to pick one guy that you would value over. I like Anton Khudobin. He beats to his own drum,
Yeah.
you know, and I respect that.
Yeah.
So I think every guy, I love Jonathan Quick's athleticism. You know, he was as good as there was in his prime. I love how Henrik Lundqvist at 6 foot sticks to his game and just plays as he plays and has had a great career. You know, Carey Price's fluidity and efficiency, it's hard to ever try and replicate that. I mean, you could go through and I could pump every guy's tires in the league for things they do well. John Gibson's tracking is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things you can take away. So hard to pick one guy.
Okay, that's cool. I got 3 quick ones here. Best shootout guy in the NHL doing video.
Doing video. You know who was unreal? I'll go back just a year, was Mike Camilleri.
Oh, yeah.
And UC Jokinen was incredible. Right now, there's a few, and I like Silverberg in Anaheim.
Okay, yeah. Biggest PP threat, power play threat. So you're on the kill.
Hard to pick one. If I was to pick power plays, units, I'd go Washington, Winnipeg. I just like the way they set up with their right-handed one-timers.
Okay, and then last one, most lethal D-man.
Offensively, obviously, I mean, you watch Brent Burns in the offensive zone and the way, and especially, and I say this with tons of respect to everybody else in the league, but when Pavelski and those guys were playing and Burns was on the point, like, you were guaranteed 12 deflections a game.
Yeah.
Like, and because he is so smart with how he delivers the puck to the net and how quickly it gets to the net, there's a reason he leads the NHL in shots every year. And then the other guy that has really impressed me over the last kind of year and a half has been Makar and Yossi. I think those two guys are as elite as they get.
That's awesome.
This was awesome, Schwartzy. We're up on the clock here. Really appreciate you coming on this call, talking to our goalies. Hopefully the season gets back, and best of luck to you and the Oilers up there, but really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Schwartzy.
No problem. Anytime, guys. Good luck with everything yourselves.
Thank you.
Thanks, bud.